speaking of that, joining us right now from somewhere around the world, it is Mike from around the world. How you doing, Mike?
Pastor Paul, God bless you. I thought I'd save you 2 minutes.
You saved me too. Thank you so much. You can see I was struggling. So sorry. Yeah, Heidi's got it. I got it.
It happens.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? But
Look at the bright side.
what's
You won't
that?
get that. You won't get that same cold again.
No, it's gone. Right, right.
There
Thank
you
you.
go.
Thank you. Mike, okay, so what's happening here? The sun is exploding again, just like you said, right on time. But we got wars abounding. But let's talk about the sun a minute. I mean, Planet X webinars coming out January 26th. You said we better talk. We better talk about this subject.
Yeah.
And we've got the guys. We went and locked down both Gil Brazarda and BP Earthwatch, and we're going to throw Stan Deo and Rex Bear in there too. Rex has done extensive interviews with Hopi Indians about their prophecy about this very subject, so I think that's fascinating. And Heidi's going to talk about, from ancient scripts, going to talk about solar flashes that has been written about in ancient scripts. But
Yeah.
okay, so what's going on here? It's January 4th, and yep, we have another explosion, M4 class.
Yeah. Those dates are. It gives a view into the activity. They've been pretty near, not
Yeah,
right on the money, but
yeah,
pretty near.
pretty near, yep.
With the sun's activity increasing like this, right? Well, oh, by the way, we're about to go into I'm going to call it a nap time sort
Okay,
of thing. But to understand this, you have to understand the interchange of energy, period, right?
okay.
All those who understand how a battery operates, if they can understand how a battery operates, they'll understand what's happening to the Earth. Every change on the sun is affecting every planet, not just the Earth, but every planet. Uh, for example, there are anomalies on most of the planets right now, right? And we know that. Well, I'll bring that out in the webinar. But one of the planets, there's an expectation for it to be slung out of its orbit, which is very dangerous. It's going to
What?
be a dangerous situation. Yeah,
What?
it will with a 5,000% certainty be moved out of its orbit.
Are you talking about now
And
one of our 9 planets, if you
yeah,
count,
oh yeah,
is
oh
going to
yeah,
get slung out of its orbit?
yeah, yeah, and that will become a problem. And it's but we're looking at these long durational cyclical seasons that we don't know about. It's kind of like humanity was born in the middle of summer and we never heard of winter, right?
It's true.
So nobody's around who understands part of the bigger transitions which take place because, well, we only have so many winters, as they say, before this big event. And it just so happens two things happen. People change, right?
Yep.
So the activity of people is targeted. It's not the first time they've been here, right? Um, the activity is targeted because mankind, just like a baby develops and is born, right? So does man develop. And he reaches a specific stage. And when he reaches that stage, he does that in so many generations, right? Um, we're at that stage right now. In fact, most things will become highly predictable, because we're at a stage now where humanity is about to go through one of those periods, one of these changes that nobody has witnessed, but they wrote about, right?
I see.
And that's why the mentality of people are changing. The new kids that come out now, right? They are, there's a physical difference in these new children versus us. There's a physical difference, right?
What's causing that?
Well, that's just part of the stages of us. For example, back about 100 years ago, right? Everybody was hairy. Everybody was super hairy, right?
Okay.
Because that was necessary. That was
Yeah.
necessary.
Stay warm.
Also, bone density was different. It was necessary. Also, the skeletal resilience, right? Even the fiber structure inside the skeletal system was different. is different now. It's very different now. And the mental capacity of the children is, although they may not have a lot of common sense, right? They have a lot of conscience sense. In other words, they can easily adapt to mathematics. They can easily adapt to physics, but they cannot see, they don't have the ability to see things operating. They do have an ability to work things. They have great memory, greater short-term memory than we ever had because their brains are different, right? Now, believe it or not, they knew about these changes. It's just not something published. That's what the elitists pride themselves on, having knowledge nobody else, that they have. And so they're in charge. Think about it. They're in charge of the food industry,
Right.
medical industry. And
Right.
so they can actually foster change in these new kids coming out through foods, through medicine, right? The medicines that adults take, this, that, and the other. So what that will eventually do is allow them to become totally adaptable to all the new stuff that's going on. So in essence, they can rewrite the future of mankind into what they want it to be, which, by the way, is predictable because we're degrading as far as morals go, right? Because morals are not being emphasized. They're just not.
No, they're not.
And so when they're not emphasized, mankind has a habit of going testing all limits. And anyway, that we have that change. That's a change in humanity. At the same time, the Earth is also changing, and the ice cores, rock strata, uh, all these different findings in Earth, you can see definite changes,
So you're
right?
so you're saying that this binary system that's making such a change to the sun and to the earth and going to fling one of our other planets off its course. Um, this has happened before. We've had this thing before, but is it
Yeah,
maybe closer this time than ever before? I'm wondering if
sure it
it's
is. Here's what I believe. Here's the unpredictable part, right?
okay.
If another solar system, just like ours,
Hmm.
say it's just like ours, is coming into this solar system, or even some stray objects, if you want to call it that, they have orbiting objects, right? So there's no guarantee with those orbiting objects which one will be close to Earth or not. One thing we do know is that they will, some of those objects will come directly into the solar system. They're going to be here,
Okay.
right in the solar system. And that's going to be a big problem. Of course, at that time, everybody who's left is just not going to have normal times, right? They're going to be in a different mind
Well,
state.
what do
Let's
you mean
put it
who's
that way.
left? I mean, are you talking after
Well,
apocalypse? I mean,
because you're looking at most people think of this time as it's going to come in like 20 years or something like that. Here's the bad part about it.
okay, okay,
In times past, right? The time, for example, the time before the Egyptians wrote about this, they also documented the Egyptians and some of those cultures around them. They've also documented that it happened before,
yes,
right?
yes,
And
yes.
they dealt with ruins. The ancient Egyptians investigated ruins, right? Now think about
Okay,
that. In those
okay.
ruins,
Wow.
they found hints and clues also, but the knowledge had been lost, right? The
Hmm.
Grecians, the same thing. They investigated these ruins, and but the data was limited.
You're right.
Right now, people investigate ruins, right? The only thing left are the stones that they possibly etched things into. But I think that this will help people out. Most people think of the ruins, something happened, it burned up everything, and the ruins are the last things left. Not true. Not
No,
true.
no.
Some of the ruins, right, were made as people think they're temples of worship, right?
Yeah.
Wrong conclusion for a lot of
Okay.
those, for many of those places. Something was so devastating, Pastor Paul, that they knew that the only thing that could survive, based upon what they investigated, was stone. And so what they did was they etched star calendars into these places, right?
Yes, yes. I
Now, of
know
course,
that.
man will build a mythology around everything he finds. And in the absence of explanations, they go with what they go with. As of late, though, they've been digging deeper and deeper into the earth for these archaeological finds. They have found new Sumerian tablets, solar
Mm-hmm.
seals.
Mm-hmm.
They have found Arcadian, Sanskrit things, etchings. They have super and quantitative computers now. So then determining what it actually states is more accurate than it ever has been before. We have artificial intelligence, which was pressed and needed to decipher some of the blueprints they dug up, right? Actual blueprints, actual blueprints. And so they couldn't do that. Humans couldn't do that. Supercomputers couldn't do that. So they needed AI to run all these simultaneous simulations to extract what they actually need from these things. That's why in 1994 through 1998, right, the U.S. Army went and took a lot from the Middle East. If anybody remembers that,
I remember
they took a
that.
lot from the Middle East,
I remember that.
and they took it. They did not share it with anybody.
No.
They locked it up, right? They haven't anyway, because it was very important. So they know about the these cyclical events
Emerald.
on the earth. They're not a joke.
Was the Emerald tablets part of that?
No, they
No.
found something much
Much
more.
more than
They
them.
already know it. They already know what that is. Here's the bad part.
Okay.
What most people, what you have a public science, right? Then you have
Yeah.
this secured, I'm going to call it stuff. And the secured stuff are all the puzzle pieces that your people out who are good people, they need those to connect what they're seeing. Because if you ripped a page out of the book Moby Dick, right,
Yeah.
you would not know the context of that story. It may
Hmm.
be an interesting find. You may come up with some conclusions, but you will not know the context and you can't know the story, right?
Right.
Same thing is happening here. Those are partial tablets. They think they're complete. They're
I
not. They're
no, they're not like
partial.
one page out of a
And
book.
right.
Right.
And when they don't know the rest of the story, it throws the whole thing off because they were
Right.
giving a warning, and they emphasized this. They wanted their children
Mm.
to be prepared during
Yeah.
this time. They even gave fables, hoping that as we continued and found more and more things, we would get away from the fables, become matured, and really see those calendars. Those are calendars. They turned a lot of things, they turned into worship with a false history. They weren't worshiping some of these things like the bull. You see, that's a
Right.
prominent figure everywhere,
Yeah.
right? That represents a constellation, right? They knew about the constellations, right?
Right.
In Genesis, we hear about the constellations.
Yes.
Abraham knew about the constellations.
Yes.
All these Hebrew patriarchs, they knew about the constellations.
Yes, they did.
We is you have these people who came around. Satan, as he does, and he tries to turn what is divine, that knowledge, into something spooky by having people do fortune telling. And so when you
Right.
start
And then
bringing up
people
constellations, people say, "Oh no, no,
don't
don't
even.
touch
Yeah,
that."
I know.
Well,
I know.
no, God didn't want us to divine anything. That is a calendar. Those are set for signs and seasons. The problem is we don't
God
know how to
set the
read it.
calendar. It's God's
That's right.
calendar. Right.
That's
Right.
right. And we don't know how to read it anymore. It's telling us a story. Well, we're coming up on a time that is very important. That's marked by these odd eclipses, blood moons, and everything else. So these temples are warnings. They have the same calendar. Something so devastating happened, and the survivors began to build things for their kids. They even stressed in some of those found documents to, above all information, make sure this is passed down from generation to generation to generation to generation. And when you know what that same thing is in the Bible, tell your children, tell your children's children, tell your
Yes.
children's
Yes.
children's children. And these were about the
Pass
declarations
it
God set
down.
in the
Yes.
Old Testament. That's right. Make sure they never forget this. But we forgot it. And then people are iniquitous. And so they don't like to tell the truth. They like to confuse things. Um, the sun is going to go through further changes we have never experienced before, changes that will alter the perceived color of the atmosphere. Right now, that seems slight, to have the atmosphere change colors. Right, that seems
Right.
big deal. That's what everybody says, big deal. No, that is a huge deal because we cannot produce vitamin D without a certain spectra of light. We can't do it, which means everybody is going to start feeling lethargic like they are right now. People are going out to get the sun. but their energy is being zapped. They don't know why. And every time they go to the hospitals, right, some of those decompiled reports keep saying that people are vitamin D deficient. That means their bodies are not making enough vitamin
Is
D.
it
We get
because
that
of
from
the
the sun.
changes on the sun?
That's right. The light is
Wow.
being diffused. Even right now, that light is being diffused.
Diffused. The
Even right
sun.
now, which means that concentration of that normal spectrum of light we're just not getting. It's affecting the plants. It's affecting crops. The corn is getting harder. It doesn't matter where you grow corn at, right? Something is happening to the corn and it's causing it to change. And it's getting tough. Corn is getting
Yeah,
tough.
you can't hardly eat
Um,
it.
if you don't refrigerate things properly, your food won't last for a couple of hours sitting out. You could take it. You used to be able to take food out and set it on your countertop for at least 4 hours, and it would still be good. Now 1 hour, and it's kaput. You can see, the atmosphere in people's homes is not so good condition. It's full of particulates and everything else. But food is losing its resiliency. The radiation is altering, it's changing. The properties of radiation are changing, and how the Earth processes the radiation is changing, which is why, and I believe it was BP Earthwatch that primarily put out to the Christian community that when you have a solar flare, you're going to have an earthquake,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. He was the
People
one
would
that
not,
started that. Yeah.
many people wouldn't in the Christian community wouldn't be talking about that unless BP said that. And
Right.
what he had observed was the same process of charging a battery on a more complex scale, right? Because if you know about electrons and how they fill holes by way of chemistry in a battery's chemistry, and then they are extracted out or let out, then you know what's happening in the Earth every time we have solar activity, not just a flare, but solar activity. The Earth absorbs it through its north and south poles,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
That energy by way of electrons, let's say electrons it goes right into the Earth, but it's overcharging the Earth, causing it to heat up. Just like a battery in your cell phone, it's going to heat up once if it's used, or if it's not used. In this case, it's a much more complex set of um, uh, uh, um, um, operations taking place, but you get the gist of it. But the Earth is getting overcharged on a continuous basis because the solar winds, the properties from the solar winds have also altered, which means it's putting out more types of radiation than the benign types of radiation, right? The
Wow.
spectrum is changing, right? We're talking about X-rays all the way up to visible light, all the way out to something else. And so as this happens, cancer cases go up. Everything is going up in that regard. The sad part about it is this. What are the consequences of solar activity on the Earth, right? Is a type of storm nobody knows about. Nobody knows.
No,
Nobody
because we've
talks
not
about it.
seen.
Nobody knows about it. And it's not, we're not talking about a meteor storm. This is a different storm people just don't talk about. But it happened this year twice. It happened last year once, and it happened 52 years ago in the Middle East in a isolated region, but it's going to be happening everywhere, and it's going to be quite devastating. Um, the Earth itself, these land shifts that we keep having, they're going to become more and more violent until everything, everything is moved, right? They're going to continue to go that way until everything is moved. So as we continue to have this solar activity, and it will increase, it'll increase, then it will go to sleep, and then it will come back with a vengeance. In the meanwhile, we're going to have a solar stream hitting Earth that's similar to a CME, a constant CME, right?
Yeah, just one after
A
another.
constant one.
Like, will it
And
come? Will it come like in streams? But did it come in pulses as well, or eruptions from the sun?
but think about the solar winds, the same magnitude as some of your mid CMEs, your mid rated CMEs.
Okay.
Imagine that. We're
Yeah.
talking constant, a
Constant.
constant
Constant.
stream, right? Which means forget the solar winds.
Well,
You're
is
going to
it?
have a constant
Well,
stream
won't that
of
mess up
energy
our
coming off it.
magnetosphere? Won't it? Won't,
It
will,
will it will cause the magnetosphere to become super chaotic. It'll
okay.
cause surface temperature anomalies like we've never seen before.
Big
So
shifts
this
of
year,
heat,
this year alone,
temperature,
fires
temperature shifts.
fires are going to be devastating. They're going to be devastating. Um, last year was the worst year for heat and heat-related things. This year is going to break that record badly, right?
Wow.
Um, which will cause problems like mold, disease from bacteria. We have hundreds of brand new species of bacteria in the U.S. that we have to deal with. Europe is going to have the same problem, but heat is going to be a deadly factor, right? People will have those pricklies. I would advise no one to go outside in sunlight unless they have proper, uh, some sunscreen that's pretty powerful, because I can almost guarantee it's going to cause people. Put it this way: people are having more aches and pains these days. Right? National reports from all hospitals, people are having more aches and pains from the age of 7 and up, past ball, 7 years old.
Yeah,
More and
that's
more kids are
crazy.
being born. More and more kids are becoming arthritic at the age of 10. Right, they're being diagnosed with arthritis at the age of 10. Something is wiping out the calcium in the human body. Things of that nature. So look for bone density, or not bone density, but bone decay, to really go into a brand new level. Right. So I wouldn't, it sounds
So
funny,
you're
but
saying,
everybody might be wearing dentures at the age of 13.
well, yeah, as I was going to say, it's going to affect their teeth. It's going to affect the joints, the cartilages in the joints. There'll be a lot
Yeah.
more information. What about UV rays? I guess what you're saying is UV rays are going to be cooking us almost. High radiation levels coming off the sun,
Yeah. Some of the more dangerous ones. That's right.
so, and you say that, and then there'll be a period of time of this, and then there's going to be a moment, or it's going to be a time when it kind of gets, whoop, there's a darkening of the sun and a cooling
Well,
down.
more like a pause in its activity. Now, here's what happens when it pauses. As
Okay.
soon as it pauses, you're going to have this evaporation effect from the ocean waters, right?
Okay.
But you're talking about a cycle that is quite violent, strong updrafts, high winds, very high
Big
winds, right?
storms then.
So imagine high pressure. Right now, there's a high pressure system moving over Tennessee, going into Kentucky. I'm sorry, going into West Virginia, right? But it's keeping two low pressure systems at bay. No storm can form in the presence of a high pressure system. Imagine the Earth with about 30 high pressure systems just forming on its surface, right? No rain, no nothing, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Dryness,
Dry. No
but
participation.
high winds. Because what happens
Yeah.
is the ocean is still going to evaporate. That's going to cause low pressure, very low pressure systems in various places. They're going to be smashed up against these high pressure systems, which cause tight isobars. That means high winds, right?
Okay.
Sporadic high winds. So you could be sitting out on a clear day and all of a sudden you can't sit outside anymore. You have to duck for shelter, right? Because of high
Wow.
winds. Expect that. We're talking about some erratic behavior. And that's just with some of the effects of the sun. But these external effects will continue to beat our heliosphere, as it's doing right now. And our magnetic shielding is going to go absolutely haywire before it joins with something else that's going to be very close to the Earth,
Now,
right?
is
Oh,
this process of these heat waves and wildfires, mold, UV rays, high winds, is this something you see happening in 24, or is that
yeah, no, 24,
okay?
24.
This summer is
This
going
is
to be a
the,
bad summer.
yeah, it is. And just so, because here's something everybody can research. It seems like about every 79 to 81 years, right? And 2024 would be in that cycle mark. Every single time there's some alterations in the magnetosphere and the composition of the atmosphere that absolutely affects humanity, causing humanity to become hyper aggressive, which ultimately results in wars. Almost every 79 to 81 years, this happens. Massive changes in humanity take place during that, right? Now, if an embryo has cycles, right?
That's
If
true.
they have different cycles, then so do we.
Hmm.
So do we, because the same God developed all of it, right? So the process of a child being born is much like the process of generations progressing in this world. They go hand in hand. You can chart that out and see the data matches
70
perfectly.
every 79 to 81 years there's some major wars. Well, Are we in that 79 to 81 year in the window?
Yeah, I do believe we are, because we're not, what's happening now, Pastor Paul, although it looks somewhat benign right now, it won't be. Um,
Right.
there's some major things,
Well,
major things happening.
Mike, in just 4 days, Israel took out Hamas's leader with a direct strike in Beirut, Lebanon. Then Israel took out the senior Islamic Jihad commander with a precision strike in Gaza. Then the United States took out Iranian backed militia leader in Baghdad. And then the Jordanians this afternoon decided to take out a couple weapons convoys that were leaving Syria toward Lebanon. And then somebody blew up in Iran. ISIS said they did that to celebrate the death of Soleimani, which I don't know. But these these four strikes. I mean, looks like a concerted effort with the United States, Israel, and maybe Jordan. I don't know if Jordan is just pretending, but I mean, is this thing broadening? Is what I'm saying? Is this broadening?
Yes, broadening big time. Following a commitment from the U.S., Israel made their move. They made the
Okay,
move. They had a
they got a
commitment. So
commitment.
then,
Okay,
that's right. So U.S. CENTCOM, right, which is charged with its coalition with Afghanistan, Bahrain, Egypt, Iran, uh, all these different places have to watch, like Iran, Iraq, and Kazakhstan, Kuwait, Oman, Pakistan,
Qatar.
Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Pakistan, uh, Turkmenistan, all these different places they have to watch. They have an agreement with Israel now. And so now, when they had that promise from the administration, they acted. But if you notice, it was a joint operation. That wasn't one single individual operating. That was combined joint task force
Right.
operation in this. And so now that they have that promise, it has forced Middle Eastern coalitions um, to play their hand or fold. And so the attack on each within each person's uh, area, that really showed what was what. Now Russia is the only one severely holding back,
Yeah.
because we're in analysis mode right now. Here's how you do that, though. You attack these forces, right? And you have analytical personnel out there that will see what they're going to shoot back. When they shoot it back, you do data extraction on those armaments or munitions, right? The only
Okay.
one we've got data on everybody except Russia, right? Because Russia's pretty slick. Putin has been using everybody else's stuff. He will not use his own stuff.
He's hanging
He
on.
won't bring it out. He will not bring it out, because if he, for example, suppose Russia brings out part of its main arsenal, right? If he does that and he uses those weapons, we will extract weapons dynamics to see what he's using, figure out everything, and then we'll counter that. We'll have a counter strategy and purpose behind that. Well, you can't build one unless you see what the enemy is using, right?
I
And in
know.
this case, Putin
He
is
don't want.
not using
No,
anything that
he's
belongs to him.
using all his
He's
old
using
stuff.
everybody else's. He's made a deal with Iran. He used their stuff. He used some of his a lot of that old surplus stuff. He's using Korea's stuff. He's using everybody's stuff but his own. He will not use his own armaments, because if he does that, he knows that NATO is going to
Right.
come up with some
Right.
sort of counter operation to those weapons. So he's a dangerous player, and if he wanted to, he could back operations in the Middle East and cause some real problems. The wild card, though, is Turkey and Jordan, and I'll tell you why. Turkey
Okay.
has already warned Israel
Yeah.
again. Okay,
Again and again.
they warned, and Jordan has facilitated Iranian cooperation with Saudi Arabia. That's unheard of,
Yeah.
to somehow overcome this issue. And so what we have are clear lines in coalitions. So get ready, because that's why we have this. We have CENTCOM, and Operation Inherent Resolve has sent out even more ships to the Red Sea, because they have an operation going in the Red Sea where they will they're not only dealing with the Islamic State and jihadists and things of that nature, but also they're building up security in the Red Sea. They have to, right before a major offensive. That's what you do before a major offensive, because they know that shipping lanes are number one targets, right? Um, but it's about to become a much broader operation. Alaska, could be consumed within the next 3 to 4 months, as far as military operations inching very close to them. And these things seem to be unavoidable at its present rate. It seems to be unavoidable.
So when these things continue, we're watching, folks, and I say, Mike, that we're really just. I actually think everybody thinks, well, maybe the war is winding down between Israel and
No,
God. No, I'm hearing today that that the Gaza operation will take another full year. Will take a full year, and it really looks like Israel's turning the guns toward Hezbollah now. It's as if they're
they
going
have
to
to.
go after them.
They have to pass ball, because they know they're talking in back channels, right?
Right.
Hamas, Hezbollah, right?
Yep.
And the Houthis
Yep.
have been talking, right?
Yep.
With I believe it's 9 other factions. They're going to launch a devastate. The talk is they're going to launch something far worse than October 7th in broader
Well, they
areas
can.
than Israel,
The
right?
Houthis
They're going to do
can. I
this,
mean, excuse me. The Hezbollah can. They could launch so many rockets. There's no way the Iron Dome could take them.
right?
But I mean, if that's going to be the plan,
Well, they've also found that the initial weapons inventory, right? Well,
yep,
some things were missed. Somehow, somebody has been complicit with Hamas. Somebody has, and allowed some of the larger systems that they have, that Hezbollah has, right?
yeah,
Um, Hamas has a whole nother base camp set up outside of Palestine, right? Far
okay,
outside of Gaza and all those places. Nobody really knew about that. They didn't know who they were, right?
all
They
right,
knew somebody was out there. They didn't know who they were. That's Hamas. So what Hamas essentially did was they took an old tactic, right, to draw out um, everything they could draw out.
yeah, out of
Now you're
Israel.
going to see everybody else starting to rise because they
Mm-hmm.
know what they're dealing with now.
Mm-hmm.
But they did not. What they didn't break out were some of the weapons platforms that were supplied by North Korea and Russia to Iran. They didn't break that out yet, and until Israel got hit with one, right?
I see.
Right now they have an ability through a coordinated attack, and this is why the U.S. has really gone forward pretty fast. That's why they're in emergency mode right now. Right now, Pascal, they're
Well,
in
look
emergency
how
mode
many
right
ships,
now.
look how many warships we have in the Red Sea and in the Mediterranean. I mean, there's a ton. I was looking at it
Right.
today. There's a ton of warships we have in both the Red Sea and in the Mediterranean Sea right now.
Well, if they launch 8,000 missiles, right, at the same time, what do you think that's going to do? Not
Hezbollah,
us, but them. If they launch 8,000
if
missiles at the same time,
Hezbollah
that's
launches
right. Hezbollah and Hamas,
At
yeah,
Israel,
at Israel and other places who are complicit with Israel's
well, it'd be
ideology.
some U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria, maybe.
They can't
Uh,
defend against that,
no,
right?
no,
That means 70% of those missiles would get through Iron Dome, right? Hawk systems, Patriot
that would
systems.
be
It would go
awful.
right through it. They go right through it because we don't. That's an overwhelming bombardment. So
Right.
suppose that happened once, and then it happened twice, because Iran right now can launch 12,000 at one time, right? And they can do that a few times throughout a few days. This is what you're dealing with,
Well, then a
and this is what they're
preemptive
trying
strike.
to.
If intel on the battlefield or out there, I should say, the intelligence community senses this is the plan, a preemptive strike is almost uh, necessary, absolutely mandatory, almost.
Now you know why Benjamin Netanyahu continues to say we have to hit them now. We
Yeah,
have to hit them now. If we
yeah,
don't hit them now, we're going to lose the element of surprise, and then it's all over. They're going to be able to inflict damage, and unfortunately, according to the Word of God, right?
yeah,
According to the Word of God, Jerusalem, we're going to have to entertain Jerusalem being occupied for 3.5 years
yeah, yep.
um,
By
by
Gentile,
hostile
by
forces.
hostile
We're gonna
forces.
we're gonna see it. So we know at some point some communications that the U.S. is not going to help them. So
You're
it's just
right.
one of those unfortunate things. So yeah,
All right, Mike. Let's talk a little bit about Russia, Ukraine, because it seems like the Russians have really stepped up their bombing offensives toward, especially toward even the capital of Kiev. And again, they're not pulling out their best equipment, but are they trying to put pressure on Ukraine to go ahead and surrender? Are they putting pressure on Washington? Are you going to fund these guys? Are you going to let them go? Where are we going here?
He's Putin has Russia has a they always do things long term, right?
Yeah, they're not
If
in no
a
hurry. No
war
hurry.
takes 50 years, it's going to take 50 years. And so what they do is Putin right now he has a strategy of he's hiding his mainline armaments and weapons, and he's just wearing the Ukraine down. And if you notice, he's doing it proportionately, right? Here's what if Putin were to ever overwhelm them, right? NATO would jump in. They would have a right to jump in. That's their agreement, right? Now
Yeah,
they're still under agreements. And so what Putin is doing is based on the proportion of munitions that are going against him, he counters that, right? But he's countering that with old stuff, with old worn out things and other people's equipment. He's not doing it with his own. So that's why on occasion he'll have a threat. We're gonna get this air base operational or this missile base operational, this, that, and the other, right? And he's talking about pulling all these different people in, but nothing has really happened on those fronts yet. And the reason why is he keeps utilizing this old stuff in proportion of what the Ukraine is doing, he's countering, right? He may
hmm
even lose some men here and there, right? But if you notice, what he did was he pulled out his what they call them his light battalions. He, they don't go frontline. They're asked for a real war. He says as for a real conflict. He doesn't call this a real conflict. That's not what he's calling it. And so he's throwing. Well, I guess all the people who don't matter that much at this war.
Right,
I guess you could say that.
right.
In other words, he's not committing anything of quote unquote Mother Russia against this. He's using all his external
Yeah,
uh, inventory first, or his all these, because half the troops that are over there in the Russian army that are fighting, some have been Syrians, a lot have been Syrians, a lot have been Iranians. They've been on rotation since it began, right?
I know he's been
And
getting them from
so
Africa. He's been getting them from everywhere.
that's right. That's right. And so what they're doing is rotating their force count or force multipliers that are over there come from foreign entities, not really Russia. And so he's preparing for something else. He suspects something else, and he's going to continue to do this and beat them down until one of two things happens: until he gets what he wants, or he's opposed by stronger forces. Right.
Right.
Other than that, he's going to continue to do this.
I don't see
It,
I
it
don't
is
see that happening now that we have a Middle East situation. I don't see stronger forces coming.
no,
While
no.
we're
I
do you?
I do see Russia, right? I do see it because they're doing it right now. Russia does tactical planning for Middle Eastern factions, right?
Okay. Yes, they do.
So he's already working with them, and what they're doing is kind of slick. But what they're doing with all these little things they're doing, their soldiers are getting practice. Is what's happening, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And what are we doing? We're not getting that practice, right? Is a big simulations are one thing, but when you get in an actual theater,
That's
you
another whole
your
deal.
plan changes. You need that combat experience,
Right.
real time Middle Eastern experience to stay on the edge. Because if you don't, if you lose the smallest edge, they're going to take full advantage of it. And the way the world is now, let's go ahead and face it: the U.S. does not have friends. We don't have friends. Israel does not have friends, and both of us, the U.S. and Israel, are being, that's starting to be challenged in the public's eye by other nations, right? Which is why electronic trade increased with China and everybody else except the U.S., right? They're going around the U.S. Saudi Arabia is making tons. These guys are making so much money. They're putting everybody to shame, and it's going to alter the markets big time. Saudi Arabia is going to do this. People are going to notice that they're going to have advertisement for more and more people to come down to Saudi Arabia and start living and start doing whatever they have to do with these new cities that they're building and actually completing this time. So it's not like last time. Anyway, the whole Middle Eastern situation is changing, and war is inevitable, right? It's
Yes,
come.
it really is. It
It's
really
coming.
it's not going to
I,
end. I mean, I look at prophecy and I see Ezekiel 30. I mean, Psalms 83 and all this collaboration against Israel. That's definitely in play. Wars broke out from that. You know,
it's happening right now.
right now,
It's happening right now.
right, and then you're rolling closer and closer and closer to Ezekiel
That's right.
38.
That's
I
right.
mean, I'm just watching Turkey and in Russia because they're the main players that
That's right.
Iran's already
That's
there.
right.
So you're right on the money, and so we just got to
That's right.
watch it, folks, as it gets bigger and bigger.
Absolutely.
Mike,
Pastor Paul, and
go ahead.
I believe it's already begun, right?
Yeah, I do too.
Sometimes in America we make this mistake just because it hasn't come to our front door.
Does
We
it?
say it does not exist. Well, World War II, right, did not come directly to our front door. Yet we had World War II.
Yes, we
Right
did.
now we have a similar situation. War ordnance has been dropped in World War II. In fact, they've used more munitions in this war than they have collectively in World War One and Two so far, right?
Wow.
So, and this is ongoing. Not to mention, we have massive cyber threats happening right now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
We have infrastructure defense issues and all this, that, and the other. So the USA is tasked out in many different areas. Plus, we're
yeah.
dealing with internal turmoil,
Uh,
right? And you know, folks, at some point, but unlike the other times, at some point, America becomes a physical target.
oh,
Physical
I
target.
would say we're
And
already on that list right now.
they have that capability. And when I say physical target, I mean they're going to have the ability, not only the ability, but they're going to do it. And we're going
Yeah,
to entertain being hit by some
outside
long range
forces.
munitions.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
we will. And sabotage internally. So,
Yes, it's a double whammy, and I
yep,
look for that too, and I really do. And I hope it's
yep,
not 2024, but would not shock me. It really wouldn't. Mike, there's another question for you. I mean, to people's on
yes,
people's
sir.
minds. You remember this summer we had the 8-foot creatures in Vegas that was documented and was seen.
Yeah, yeah,
Now we've got another situation. I don't know if it's true or not, but down in Miami, Florida, I seen the TikTok video. There was 60 some squad cars converge on a mall. There was helicopters flying over top. There was absolute shutting everything down. There was no gunfire. Nobody got shot. Nothing like that. And the final police report was there were 4 kids fighting in the parking lot with sticks. But the reports on the ground is they seen 8 and 10-foot tall creatures, and that the swarming was to contain this. Now, is this just out in left field, somebody just making stuff up, or is there something? Are we looking at another incident here?
Well, Pastor Paul, you have, I think somebody has made converged, combined 4 stories, right?
Okay.
For example, in the morning, before the police got there in the morning, they were reporting they had an uptick in security anyway because of the marketplace and the sheer number of children that were around, and they knew the nature of these kids, right?
Okay.
Afternoon comes around, they had some incidences. They had about 5, 6, or 7 incidences before this main thing happened. And then a couple of people were they had damaged property and things like that, right? So these kids started getting a little rowdy, and this happened about 6 or 7 times, and that's why all the police presence was there, because these kids were coming out from everywhere, and they did not want all those kids to continue to build up, so that there'd be a repeat in California, in Miami somewhere, at
Right.
that marketplace. And they kind of shut that down, and were looking to make sure that because a car got hit, somebody threw a bottle at a car, somebody did this, and all sorts of reports were coming in, some true,
Okay.
some not. But it had been happening all day long. And I think that some stories got converged. The creature story, if I'm not mistaken, that's supposed to be separate. That's separate from all of that.
Okay.
So that's why I say a
Oh,
convergence. There
well.
was a report
Okay.
of some of
Creatures.
some of an incident or two. There was a report of that, but I don't think it had anything to do with the kids.
All
I
right.
think it was a
So you're
convergence of
saying there's a
stories.
conversion. So the all the police presence and the helicopter and all that really had nothing to do with the creatures, but there was
Yeah, yeah,
But
Yeah,
was
there
there
was a report.
in
There was
Miami? Was it in
some
Miami?
things about that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
now not sure as the actual nature of it, right? I haven't gotten. I'll pull the details
you
later, but
you'll get it.
I believe there was a convergence of reports and maybe some folks got ambitious and threw it out there, right?
Okay, maybe
But
somebody's seen something and put two and two together and created what they thought
yeah,
it was
brand new
for.
story
But
or something
right,
like that. Yeah,
but what
yeah,
you
yeah,
are
yeah.
saying though that this these creatures that we saw in Vegas in June of 2023, which you confirmed. Matter of fact, you told us
Yeah,
there was like 23 different accounts and different
yeah,
eyewitnesses. And have we had any more of those that I just don't know about until this
yeah,
story?
yeah. But they're not going to report them. They're not going to report them, and the reason why is because the Senate, um, or in Washington, right? You have, I'd say, about 40% who are in agreement to bring out these stories of craft, right?
Yeah,
Of specimens
yeah.
and of some other things. And then you have the other percentage um, that says no, because it's not going to be financially responsible. It's not going to be a good financial move to do that with elections coming up, with the chaos of how people are, right? Because if you introduce some unknown component to the world that they really don't think it exists, for them to
The
find out it does exist is going to cause more problems. See, they've already gone through some simulations, right? And in every
yeah.
single case of all the simulations, society starts to break down and people become highly fearful. Now, when people are fearful, they start
Can't
becoming
control them.
violent, very violent and responsive. And so they're being very careful,
Then
right?
there's two subjects then that they are, in my opinion, hiding or trying not to let out because people would become extremely fearful. Number one, the Planet X going by, disrupting our entire solar system, our sun, and our
Yeah,
planet.
they're never going to
Never going to
allow that to
fully
come
allow
forward.
that, right?
Never. No,
And number
never.
two, the creatures that are crawling out of the bottomless pit, or crawling out of wherever, that live, these beings that live underground, underneath the river Euphrates, live underneath come out and out of these places. They're not going to say that's true because that would creep people out and put fear in them. So that's never
Yeah.
going
Well, if
until.
you notice, they back away from that subject. Have you
Oh,
noticed?
I know they started back down.
They don't really have a true or false thing. They just kind of back away. And the reason why is because you're dealing with something ancient now. Every Christian should know exactly what they are.
Yeah,
Every single Christian should know.
should know.
And
Yes,
they should also know there's a time that those things are given. They're given a time to manifest. They're given a time to operate. That time is not now, but they have been doing things, right?
sneaking
Uh,
out, kind of creeping
they
out a
they
little bit at
have
a
been
time.
they have been doing things like the abduction deal, right?
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
In the book of Daniel, in the feet of the statue, the dream that King Nebuchadnezzar saw, in the feet there was the iron mixed with miry clay, right?
Yeah,
And it was partly weak, partly strong. Of course, the the iron, I had my opinion on the iron and the clay, but when it says they will mingle their seed with the seed of men, but they will not cleave one to another. That's a big hint to make because in the time of the giants they took unto themselves wives,
right. Yes,
so they did
they
cleave
did cleave.
to the woman, right? That
Yeah,
they became one flesh. That's what marriage is. This time they said they will not cleave. They're going to
no,
mingle their seed with the seed of men, right?
yep.
They will not cleave. So no marriage, right? No walking around or spending time, but taking reproductive, you know, um,
Liberties.
stuff
Yeah,
from to mingle with their and come up with whatever. And that's been underway.
that's
Now
creating hybrids. That means that's
the government knows
manufacturing hybrids by extracting sperm or eggs from human
they've
beings.
been doing that. They've been doing that for
For
thousands of years.
Well, I'm not
Fastball,
shocked. I mean, Genesis
the
chapter 6 is 4,000 years ago.
right,
I mean, yeah, I'm
right.
not shocked by this. I'm
And
not.
the little gray alien
Yeah,
thing. I
little
mean,
grays.
just like what people know the little alien gray is at, right?
Yeah.
They dig up these pyramids, and near the bottom of the pyramids, in both in South America, not those stone fake things people saw, But the pyramids, they dig them up, and what do they see? They see the etchings of these things.
Yeah. Yeah,
And,
they did.
and they dug them up in China, same thing. They dig them up in South America,
Peru.
same thing.
Yep.
They dig them up in the Arctic, same thing. They dig them up in Africa, same thing. Now we're talking deep into the earth, right? Deep. So they're just getting to this stuff in the last 5 years to see these etchings, right? To see
Yep.
these gold etchings.
Yep.
And so we're talking thousands of years ago. The same thing has been, these guys have been busy all this
All over
time.
the world, so
And
they
so,
couldn't have communicated with each other. I mean,
well, think about this. They have already been influencing what's been happening on the earth. There's one thing in the Bible it says when in Revelation when it says the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of it. That stopped me in my tracks because I said, wait a minute.
yeah,
That means if at that time they're just now becoming the kingdoms of the Lord, right?
yeah,
After all this stuff happens, whose are they right now? Because there's no middle ground. There's none.
yeah,
People
yeah.
are it's either darkness or light,
You got to be on
right?
one side or the other. That's right.
So that means all these things in the kingdoms are purposely designed by that influence, period, right?
Mm,
By that influence, which makes a Christian's purpose, role, and existence in this world even more critical than they can possibly believe, right?
right.
I know for a fact that there are folks out there that do specific things that call these things unto themselves, and it's not fantasy. They're physical things happening right now. But a Christian acts as almost a repellent, like raid against flies, right?
Wow.
But where a Christian is not, these things can occupy. And there will come a time when they're given space or given years to operate, right? Now, not against anybody who belongs to Christ because of two promises from the Most High concerning us. Once we accept Christ, um, they can't overcome Christ, so they'll never get to any of us.
Amen.
But we can give up on Christ if we ever give up on Christ. The Lord has already told us that it's going to be like Sodom and Gomorrah, and we're going to be put. But these things are out there, Pastor Paul. They're
Yeah.
just held back. They can't really do what they want to do,
Well, is
right?
that
So they're
why?
peeping around corners and this, that, and the other.
Well, that's why in my book Revelation 9:11, that's what I actually do is I take the story in the scripture about Apollyon coming out of this bottomless pit and
Mm-hmm.
how he releases these other four demons that were under the river Euphrates, and it brings about the Sixth Trumpet War, which is probably World War III. It kills a third of the world. So these demons are somehow involved in and it says that in Revelation 16 that they're like frogs and they start manipulating the kings of the earth, preparing them for this great battle, for
Mm-hmm.
battles. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, we're going to see them. I believe that. I mean, I believe we're going to
Yeah,
see them. We're not just going to hear about them and be reports here and there, but literally they're going to be walking around
the
on this
governments know
earth.
that. They already know that. They have a they have their own calendar and clock. They have a clock, right? Now that sounds odd, but this clock is synchronized across every single event. So that means every single recovery event, right?
Okay.
They have seen the clock saying the exact same thing with the exact same countdown. So anybody you talk to who's part of part of the recovery teams, or something like that, or they say they are, and they start mentioning this clock,
The clock.
they're for real. They're for
Is it a
real
prophecy
because
clock? Is that what they think this
it's
is?
direct. Well, it's directly just like Satan in Revelation. Satan, when he saw that he was cast down to the earth, he knew he had but a short time.
Short
So he
time.
knows prophecy. He
Yep.
knows prophecy.
Yep.
That's when his clock ticks, right? When he
Right.
saw that he was cast to the earth. So he fully understands his own timing. He just didn't. Once he found out he was cast into the earth, that clock began. So it's in there. They know, and they know when that they're looking. Look, they said they're preparing for a great war. So here's my understanding is this: men will have a war, right?
Yeah.
One of the worst wars they've ever had. So
Yeah.
we've already had war on the earth, but we're about to have a big one,
Gonna have a
right?
big
That will
one.
cost a lot of lives.
Yes.
But then there's going to be another war, a war where Satan directly and all of his minions
Yep.
directly deceive the inhabitants of the earth to go against the living God, which is
Yep.
that fulfillment of all things. So,
That
yeah,
comes after
but
World
these,
War III, and I believe you're right. I believe you have this big man-made war,
yeah,
which is caused by manipulation by demons.
that's right.
But then Satan and his minions themselves will participate
That's right.
in a war against humanity and against God.
You probably got people out there right now, right? They may be shocked I must say this, but
Go ahead.
any one of those who have gone through this abduction experience, they haven't told people, but they've been prepared. They've been sent through simulation after simulation to fight anybody these things induce them to fight against. I mean, to kill them dead. So they have to be emotionless to the point where they would kill anybody. Here's the bad part: anybody who goes through those, there is, you don't know if it's a dream state or not, but anybody who goes through that, they have to fight their own family members. They have to fight helpless women, helpless children. I mean, kill them dead in these experiences. It is the worst type of torment. Yet all of them, when they wake up, they're nervous, but they know they have to stay ready for the war. They know that war is coming. Now
Wow.
you're talking about millions of people, right? When
Wow.
they had they had unsecured or the secured phone taps, right? Right after the Patriot Act, going up towards the time when Edward Snowden was ejected, they had, if you talked about aliens, your phone was tapped, your phone was monitored, and they were looking specifically for things. Why? Because these things are inherent liars. They are inherent liars, and they are masterfully deceitful, right?
These
And so
demons.
they wanted the information from people so they could fine tune the story. And do you not know that they had tracked the people who were being prepared going through these? I mean, it really bothered them to the point where they would go see a psychiatrist or talk to their local pastor, or try to, right? They found out who these people were just to see what they were talking about. All of them were talking about the exact same thing, about how they had to kill innocent people, how people would turn into monsters and they would kill them and they would be people again. And these people were traumatized with these types of night terrors, right?
Gee.
But you're talking about tens, if not hundreds of millions of people. So a lot of people know about that. They've been through that. They're just not talking
They
about
can't
that,
say
right?
nothing. They're scared to
No, they're
say it.
not talking
Right.
about it.
Wow. There's so much stigma with it, and that people are just saying, "No, you're crazy," or "You've lost your mind."
Well, the doctors aren't, because
No, they
there's another
know.
group. There's tens of there's I say there's hundreds of thousands of women, right, with their families and husbands, who have actually conceived, have been about 3 months pregnant, and then went to the doctor because they knew their baby was taken. They go with their husbands,
Right.
right? And sure enough, the doctor says, "Well, it looks like you've never been pregnant." Now you're talking about lots of
I
you're talking
know.
about
Heidi
all
talked us.
sorts of reports that are realistic reports.
Yep.
And so, either, and this spans countries. People who had never been in contact have the exact same story.
Heidi has
I
interviewed
personally, I
women.
believe that is the work of the fallen. That is simply the work of the
Absolutely.
fallen. That's how they
Absolutely.
work. Yeah.
Heidi has interviewed women who have been through this experience, and it's very credible and very realistic, and it is truthful, and it is, and it's so traumatic that it's devastating. It's beyond. It's the work of the fallen for sure. It is the
Yeah.
work of the
Yeah.
fallen.
It is. It is.
Yep.
You know what? They're waiting until the atmosphere of people is becoming highly immoral, right? So when people no longer really care, they have desensitized most people. It's to the point now, they already said that UFOs are real. They already said that they have recovered craft, right? They already corroborated that in Washington, and people still don't care. So they are desensitized to the point where they're still not going to pay attention. And that's what they're doing step by step, is to get people not to pay attention, to make it normal. So when they come out with the story, nobody cares. And then when all these things launch, because in the Bible, Pastor Paul, Jesus said the world will not know until it
It's too late.
bites them, right?
Right. Right.
Essentially, until it gets them. And you have to ask yourself, how can they not know this stuff? Well, it's because they desensitize everything. We're
Yeah.
having more earthquakes than we ever had before. Nobody cares. We're having major solar disruptions, out
Nobody
of
cares.
season. Nobody cares. We're having the people you wouldn't expect to be in government are in government all over the face of the earth. Nobody cares. Things have been going wrong. The weather phenomena is just topping the charts as far as first time happenings. Nobody cares. We've had 1,000-year storms every week. Nobody cares. Right?
Yes.
So all these changes and nobody cares. They're not going to care until they lose their own lives or their lives are threatened.
Right.
And only at that point will they pay attention. So, the world itself is just, they're going to be blind until it overtakes them. But I believe we're meant to know, right?
Yeah,
Because
with the
something happens to
Christians.
us, that's right. It gets our attention. And I believe
Amen.
God does that on purpose. He
Amen.
does. We were born, I believe God's children were born like that. They can't shake it. They can't help us. What happened? What? And they get excited when certain disastrous things begin to happen. Why? Because I believe God put a truth in them. This time that we live in now, all of us knew we were going to be living in. We may have denied it. We may have been convinced it wasn't coming, but somehow we knew. We knew.
Yeah, we knew.
And that's what drew us to prophecy. Because if it is one thing all of us believers have in common, is that we do like prophecy. We know prophecy is coming,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
We may argue how it's coming, but
Right.
we do know prophecy
We
is
know it's
coming.
coming.
And it's a serious deal, right? So we
Amen.
all have that same, and God did that on purpose because why? We are that generation. I believe we are that generation that will see all these things come to pass.
Amen.
We're that picked generation. Nobody else is like this generation.
We are that fig tree
That's right.
generation. Amen
That's
to
right.
that. Amen to that. Mike, appreciate it so much tonight. I mean, you're on fire tonight with some great information for us all and absolutely the truth. We know our eyes are open. We see what's happening and we're not running away from it. We're not afraid because the Lord hasn't given us the spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. And we have
Amen.
that in Christ. So thank
Amen.
you tonight, Mike, for being here and being a part of it again and sharing with us the good news of the word and how we have to stay on fire and be ready. So thank you, my brother, so much.
And Pastor Paul, God bless you, Heidi, and your household always.
Thank you so much. Amen.
All right. God bless.
God bless.